And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant statement, Mr. Secretary.
And I respond.
Senator Chris Van Hollen came into this hearing trying to publicly shame Secretary Marco Rubio over immigration, student visas, Gaza, and foreign aid. But the moment Rubio finally got the floor, he fired right back. This exchange went completely off the rails fast, and you can feel the tension explode in the room.
And you used to speak with conviction about the importance of foreign aid as a tool to advance American values and interests. Then you stood by while Elon Musk took a chainsaw to USAID and other assistance programs. That has left a staggering toll, broken trust with countries, openings for China and other adversaries, and countless preventable deaths of children and others. You know that for 78 days, the Netanyahu government did not allow a scrap of food to enter Gaza to reach over 2 million civilians. 57 children have died from malnutrition so far, and more than 14,000 children are in imminent danger of dying of starvation. That is a gross violation of both U.S. and international law. What did you do? Nothing. Not once did you publicly call upon the Netanyahu government to end the blockade. Fortunately, other countries spoke out, and now we see a tiny trickle going in. Where have you focused your energy instead, Mr. Secretary? Well, your first trip as Secretary of State was to El Salvador, not to promote democracy, but to cozy up to President Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. The result was a cash for collusion deal to deprive people living in America of their constitutional rights to due process. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, instructed you to facilitate the return to the United States of Abrego Garcia, who the administration admitted was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Your response? You've openly flouted judicial orders. When asked whether you have been in touch with El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, you boasted, quote, "I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would never tell? A judge." Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. You dredged up a relic from the McCarthy era to claim that student protesters pose a threat to the foreign policy of the United States. Give me a break, Mr. Secretary. You know as well as I do this isn't about national security. It's about punishing free speech. And you know that in America, the government doesn't get to use its power to punish speech it doesn't like. Yet in March, you boasted about revoking student visas, saying, and I'm quoting, "We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa," unquote. Let's look at one of those lunatics, Mr. Secretary, Ms. Ozturk. Her crime was co-authoring an op-ed in her college paper critical of Tufts University's response to the war in Gaza. Your own department found zero links to terrorism, no anti-Semitic statements, but you still yanked her visa and shipped her off to detention in Louisiana. You have shown through your words and your actions what the answer is. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant statement, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask
Senator,
questions.
please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his
Your
response.
time's up, Senator, and woefully used, I might add.
Well-
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr.
Secretary, please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation. I don't regret psychosocial support services.
I raised
USAID.
Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman, or do I?
Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes of
I chose to
railing on-
use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use my
suspend
time that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come, you're going to see who you went to defend.
Senator,
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated
Senator,
comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You've had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the United States because he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach to that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them we've had communications with the president of El Salvador, I am under no obligation under our division of powers in this country and to share with the judicial branch how I conducted diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive. If I started sharing with courts, or frankly, with the media, my conversations with foreign leaders and all of their details, no foreign leader would talk to me again, and we would break trust with them. So I have complied with every court order. What I won't comply with is an order to disclose what I'm saying and what we're talking about with a foreign leader, because then they won't talk to me. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas, and it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Osterk did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single one of these cases, the factors are different.
Senator,
the bottom line is, if you're coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you have a visa,
First Amendment apply to
we will
people
revoke
living in the United States?
And we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a bunch of lunatics who are here on student visas.
Disrupting the foreign policy of the United States.
I want to do more. I hope we can find more of these people.
That's pathetic, Mr.
In fact,
Secretary.
the other day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was, and I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke it.
I feel so much safer
right,
when you lock up people like Ms. Osterk, Mr. Secretary.
We've had enough time on the subject. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. That was not a normal Senate hearing. That was a full-scale political collision between two completely different visions of what America should be doing, both at home and abroad. And honestly, this exchange tells you almost everything you need to know about where Washington is right now. Chris Van Hollen tried to frame Marco Rubio as someone who betrayed his old principles. You could hear it throughout his entire speech. He opened by talking about how they served together in Congress, and how he believed Rubio once stood for democracy, constitutional rights, and American leadership overseas. But what Van Hollen was really doing was trying to paint Rubio as another Republican who changed completely once he joined the Trump administration. And Rubio was having none of it. What made this hearing so explosive is that Rubio didn't back down or try to soften anything. In fact, he doubled down on almost every controversial policy Van Hollen attacked him over. That is what shocked Democrats in the room. Rubio basically said, yes, we cut the funding, yes, we revoked the visas, yes, we deported gang members, and we're going to keep doing it. That is a completely different Republican Party from the old cautious establishment GOP that constantly tried to avoid confrontation. Rubio sounded much more like the modern America First movement that has taken over the party under President Donald Trump, and honestly, that is why Democrats are getting increasingly frustrated with Rubio specifically. They expected him to be more moderate because of his past reputation. Instead, he has become one of the administration's most aggressive defenders. Look at how this hearing started. Van Hollen spent several minutes accusing Rubio and Elon Musk of destroying USAID and weakening America's influence abroad. This has become one of the biggest talking points from Democrats lately. They argue that cutting foreign aid creates openings for China, destabilizes poor countries, and damages America's image around the world. But here's the problem for Democrats. A lot of Americans are simply no longer buying that argument. Rubio immediately countered with examples of what the administration claims were ridiculous USAID projects. He brought up taxpayer money going toward YouTube channels, social programs overseas, and controversial international projects that many voters never even knew they were funding. And politically, that argument works because Americans are dealing with inflation, high housing costs, and economic pressure at home. When people hear billions being shipped overseas while their own communities struggle, they start asking hard questions. That is exactly why the Trump administration has leaned so heavily into this issue. They know voters are increasingly skeptical of massive foreign spending packages, especially when Washington cannot seem to control the border, reduce crime, or lower costs domestically. Then the hearing shifted into immigration and deportations, and this is where the exchange became even more intense. Van Hollen tried to accuse Rubio and the administration of violating constitutional rights by deporting people and revoking visas connected to anti-Israel campus protests. He framed it as an attack on free speech and compared it to McCarthy-era political repression. But Rubio's response was politically brutal because he reframed the entire debate around security and order instead of speech. He argued that visas are privileges, not rights. That is a very important distinction politically and legally. Rubio basically said the United States has every right to deny entry to foreign nationals who come into the country and participate in violent protests, campus takeovers, riots, or disruptions. And whether Democrats like it or not, that position is popular with a lot of Americans right now. The chaos on some college campuses over the last couple of years deeply alienated ordinary voters. Many parents watched videos of buildings being occupied, students blocked from attending class, anti-Israel demonstrations turning aggressive, and universities looking completely out of control. Republicans saw an opening there and they took it. Rubio's comments were designed to send a message that the administration is done tolerating it. He even openly said he wants more visas revoked. That was not accidental. That was meant to show strength. And then came the biggest moment of the entire exchange, El Salvador. This is where Rubio went directly on offense against Van Hollen personally. Instead of staying defensive, Rubio accused Van Hollen of essentially sympathizing with or defending a gang-affiliated individual deported to El Salvador. You could immediately hear the room erupt after that. Now politically, this is exactly the battlefield Republicans want. They want the conversation centered on gangs, border security, deportations, and crime because they believe that is where Democrats are weakest with swing voters. Democrats keep trying to frame these cases around due process and constitutional protections. Republicans keep reframing them around public safety and national sovereignty. And in today's political climate, those two sides are talking past each other completely. Another huge part of this hearing that shouldn't be ignored was Rubio's argument about separation of powers. That section may not go viral online, but it actually matters a lot long-term. Rubio argued that courts cannot dictate how the executive branch conducts diplomacy with foreign governments. That is a major constitutional argument that this administration keeps making across multiple legal battles. The administration's position is essentially that federal judges are overstepping into executive authority, especially on immigration and foreign policy. You are going to keep hearing that argument repeatedly, because this White House clearly intends to challenge judicial authority aggressively whenever it believes courts are interfering with executive power. And that matters because these fights are no longer isolated incidents. This is becoming a broader constitutional battle between the executive branch and the judiciary itself. But politically, what stood out most in this hearing was the confidence Rubio showed. He didn't sound cautious. He didn't sound apologetic. He sounded completely comfortable taking the fight directly to Democrats, the media, the courts, and campus activists all at once. That is a major shift from the Rubio people remember from years ago. And whether you agree with him or not, you can see why the Trump administration values him in this role. He is able to articulate the administration's worldview in a way that is polished, aggressive, and confrontational without sounding rattled under pressure. Meanwhile, Van Hollen's strategy was clearly designed to morally isolate Rubio by accusing him of abandoning American values and democratic principles. But the problem Democrats continue running into is that moral outrage alone is no longer enough to win these arguments politically. Voters increasingly care about outcomes, stability, borders, inflation, and public order more than speeches about international norms or institutional traditions. That does not mean Democrats have no argument. It means the political environment has changed dramatically. At the end of the day, this hearing exposed the massive divide shaping American politics right now. One side believes America has become too weak, too permissive, too globally distracted, and too hesitant to enforce order. The other side believes constitutional protections, humanitarian obligations, and democratic norms are being sacrificed in the name of security and nationalism. And these fights are only going to get more intense as the election cycle heats up. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Rubio was defending America's interests here, or do you think Van Hollen exposed something deeper about where this administration is heading?